Okay, so hi Ross, thank you for joining me today. Really excited to have this chat with you about your recently released book. For those of you watching, Ross Thornley is the co-founder of AQ AI and author of Moonshot Innovation. Ross, again, thanks for joining.
Pleasure, looking forward to it.
Brilliant. So first of all, can you just tell us a little bit, just introduce your AQ AI in a bit more detail and just tell us a bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I've been an entrepreneur the majority of my working life. My background was brand and marketing. I ran an agency for nearly 18 years, scaled that, employing around 100 people over that period, and sold it in 2017. And a lot of the latter half of that was driving innovations, running workshops, and helping people shift how the perception of brands and people behave and understand their interactions with businesses and different people. Now what we're working on with AQ AI is measuring and improving adaptability. So AQ is for Adaptability Quotient. So you might be familiar with IQ and EQ, but Adaptability Quotient we think is going to be critical measurement in an ever fast changing world, which really is what Moonshot Innovation is partly about.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. And Moonshot Innovation then, I mean, I've read it. It's an amazing book. I don't quite even know where or how to start summarising it because there's so much in there. Are you able to summarise it? How would you?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, you know, as your first book, and I've spoken to a number of authors, and often your first book, your fear is, you know, missing something out. So often you cram so much in there. And I think there is, you know, I've wanted to provide so much value to the reader by putting all of these things in. So it's kind of, you know, like many books, it's in three parts. The first part is just setting the context and scene about what is exponential times, what is some of the technologies, and kind of why now. And the second part is then dealing with the more human side. So how do leaders behave and thrive with all of this exponential technology and things that are going on? And then the third part is really about what actions are you going to be able to take as a result of this? So the point of it is technology is inert until we give it a purpose. We've got this great theme that's been now 5 years since its creation is the UN Sustainable Development Goals. I see them as the to-do list for the planet, you know, massive opportunities. So it's taking this mix of, these are the big problems, big opportunities, these 17 goals, and we've got some great exponential technologies that need to deploy to solve problems. There's a great match, but how do we do that? How do we change the mindsets and thinking to believe that even these massive things are possible and how to leverage that? So that's what the book's about, is to try and help people think bigger, be inspired, and also some practical tips of how to implement Moonshot Innovation in their organizations.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, because what I find fascinating about the book and you as a person actually is your ability to futurecast. And I think maybe to you, because you are a natural thinker of things in the future, it probably just feels like thinking. I think to a lot of people, they might read this and think, my God, this, because your vision, you can go very far into the future, just as there are a lot of stories in there from the past that you use to inform your present opinions as well. And I think that's fascinating, but you also have this ability to root it in the here and now to make it make sense for people. So I think the book's incredible because it takes what could be a massive, quite unthinkable topic and essentially kind of anchors it and makes it feel quite stable and accessible.
I think that's one of the challenges. You know, we consume the future in a number of ways. You know, media helps us with that through science fiction. And, you know, we have these kind of light and dark views. We have a dystopian view, we have a light view of utopian. And often because it's portrayed in a visual media of movies, which have other characters that maybe make it less real, we almost disengage from it of how does this affect me? I'm just being entertained. But I think the reality and what I've tried to do in the book is shift from science fiction to science fact, and how a lot of these things that were potentially thought as of way in the future, and showing they're really here, they are more accessible, they're not just in silos and labs and, you know, large companies or even very wealthy individuals that can play with these types of things is they are now available. And the pace of that availability is going from deceptive to disruptive. And I think giving a sense that that's not a place to be fearful, but a place to be excited in is just a choice. And that's what I'm trying to do with readers is give them some anchorings, as you've said, into how to think about these things. And it's not about technology. It's not a technology book. This is about humans and purpose and using then technology to serve our endeavors.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the book you talk about the natural human desire to make the world a better place. And as you pointed out, unless you're a psychopath, of course we all want to make the world a better place and the human race live longer and have a higher quality of life. And then of course that introduces new issues in itself, doesn't it? Like sustainability, like how many more people can the planet take, or living 3 times as long as they did however long ago. And within technology, but more so within the human ability to apply it alongside our own, as you say, emotional sense and ability to adapt and our own resilience, and the solutions are all there. How does this apply to, again, a lot of people may still struggle to see how it really applies to them. There may be a sense of, is this my responsibility? I
think the saying that I like is, assume noble intent. And if we start from that point, an individual might have noble intent to affect themselves or their family or their community or the globe, depending on where they are in their journey of things. And what technology allows us to do is think about self and our community. Can I just help a person I love? It might be someone in my family. And I create something through that thinking that then now suddenly becomes scalable to other communities to be accessible for that. I think the challenge is we've done this throughout history, and a lot of the big moonshots, i.e. taking on a challenge that we don't know how to solve, is a scary shift in thinking. Generally, we're better at the incremental parts of taking productivity or efficiency, using data and using what we've done yesterday to make tomorrow a little bit better by bringing yesterday forward. I think the reality now is that many of the things that we think were stabilizing and great that we want to bring forwards have morphed into being the very things that might hold us back from surviving, let alone thriving tomorrow. So I think that that's one challenge, and I want to empower everyone to be aware of that. Otherwise, there is a risk of being left behind. The other is you might start off with a noble intent and then have other people interact with it that gives unexpected consequences. And the caution tale of that is, in a linear world, those unexpected consequences could be controlled and mitigated easier. If I left the stable door open and a horse goes out and that horse only walks, I can probably catch up with it and bring it back. Yeah. If I've left the stable door open now and I've created a situation that all of them have gone and within the blink of a second I can't even see them, that's an unexpected consequence, and that can be a very positive thing or a very bad thing, and it can affect the sustainability of our planet, of our health, of all sorts of things that happen. So it's a collective way of thinking responsibly to deploy technology, but doing so with some thought about in the thinking style. When you're doing these experiments and you're rapidly learning from doing them, how do you prepare to make sure that you can experiment again when something goes right or wrong, so that we can always fail forward in that aspect?
Yeah, and this is the brilliant thing about this book, and the fact that you take the time, as you say, you fully unpack the topic, linking so many topics. Cultivating an innovation mindset in the first instance, linking that in with sustainability goals, linking that in with lessons from entrepreneurship, but making this accessible to anybody. And also, it seems that the basis of the message ultimately is that if you're coming from a place of care, then actually all of this is possible. People can make a big difference. You don't have to be aiming for a Nobel Peace Prize or an X Prize or whatever. It's just simply a set of actions that people can take, and you actually also provide part of the methodology people can follow to make this happen.
To do it. I think, one thing is you create excitement and ambition and inspiration for somebody to go and do something bold. And you empower them up with, great, I believe that's now possible. The harsh reality when you then go in and try and recruit others is that, I've got a chapter in there about the immune system response to change. Be that about a new process or embedding a new piece of technology. Many humans and organizations are built to manage risk and to mitigate risk, not to take it. And Moonshot Innovation is about taking risk. And so how do you overcome some of those immune systems, because you're wanting people to do things they've never done before, to imagine and become more childlike. When we were playful, when we would imagine a new future rather than saying that's not possible because of this legacy system, this legacy process, or this person that might be in a place of authority, or you need their buy-in. So what are the techniques and things that you can use in order to overcome them? One of the things that I've found to be super effective is that if the purpose is big enough and the problem that they care about is big enough, the opportunity to experiment in a new way to solve it is more possible, rather than going for, we want to change this process, but there's no why. If the global goals are the why, it gives maybe permission to be more exploratory into new processes and things. So I think it's a hand in hand where the familiarity for some of Moonshot Innovation is known, for others they won't know what that means. But combining that with a really big purposeful project, i.e. the UN goals, I think is the perfect merriment of those things, in my view.
Yeah, definitely. And it ties it all together very clearly. I also think that you provide the bigger picture. As you said, part one really does an amazing job of painting the scene and gives your topic a great backdrop. You also then provide this kind of methodology that for people who care enough and believe enough in their vision for positive change, they can actually follow these steps. And it's remarkably simple, or at least the way you make it sound is remarkably simple. I appreciate years of research and thought has gone into this on your.
I think a lot of this, from running a creative agency and teams to how do you come up with ideas? It sounds simple, and people will go, I come up with ideas in the shower or at these various points. But what are the processes you can do to make that and stimulate successful creativity time and time again? And unlocking the code of doing that through years of experimentation, and not just with labeled creative people, designers or creatives, but going into the UN system and working with finance people, or working with people in, policy making that don't necessarily self-label themselves as creative people. But what we've seen and shown through these methodologies is an ability to unlock creativity of everybody by following these kinds of priming, programming languages of subconsciously unlocking that opportunity, and how it's done collaboratively. So half-baked ideas with one person, with another, it can be very, very effective. One of the things that has always been challenging for me is between thinking time, verbal time, and documenting time in that whole process of innovation, I think is really important. So a lot of the techniques that we've shared are very replicable and deliver some really interesting outcomes rather than just outputs. It's the outcomes that happen from this. And the last thing I'd say on that is, once you see this, you can't unsee it. Once you experience it, you can't, let that go. So I've seen such a dramatic shift in mindset and behavior inside organizations long after that first try at something. Particularly within UNIDO, the Industrial Development Organization, some of the teams in there now, the work that they're doing is so beyond where they were because they've seen the techniques of how to think about 10x growth, how to think about Moonshot Innovation, and that's super impact for me.
Yeah, it is, and it's incredibly inspiring. It's exciting. If there's one thing then you could say to the person about to go out and buy this book and read this book, what is something that they could expect? Let's say they're Joe Public, what is something that they could expect to take away from this and really come away with?
Yeah, I think, one of the challenges, and you really helped us and helped me with that in the initial stages of going on the boot camp and getting the structure of the book is this a general public book? And whilst there might be general public that pick it up, the intent is actually people who are in positions of influence. Who perhaps are leading teams, doing projects, doing change management, doing innovation, doing sustainability. And for me, what they will get from this book is to learn how to shift their thinking to thrive tomorrow, not yesterday, in the business models that are required and the shifts that are required in order to be successful for our communities and our teams that we lead. This is a guide of how to do that, some examples of how to do it, and ways of thinking. So what I want them to get out of it is just that sense of permission to go for it, because there's some examples that they can root it in, and also just to ignite something that's already in there rather than try and put it into somebody that isn't thinking that way. I think that's a much harder job. For me, it's something that's already there, but it's perhaps frustrated. They've got some barriers of how they're failing to innovate as far forward as they want to, trying to bridge that future proofing within their brand or do it in a sustainable way. This will help them do that.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. Brilliant. And what an outcome that is from, what is essentially just a couple of hours of somebody's time to read this book. It is fair to say that it's transformative. Just really strongly encourage anybody who hasn't picked up a copy of Ross's book to go out and do so. Ross, where can they find your book?
Yeah, so the book is on Amazon, which is the main place that we are selling it. In the next month or so, we'll also have an Audible version, so that will be on Audible as well. And for me, this book was about shifting minds and people, and if it can just do one, I'll be a happy guy. Any people that share any thoughts back will be super helpful. As just before our call, I was talking the fact that I've bitten off a second book. So the second book that's coming is actually called Decoding AQ. So this is Adaptability Quotient. It's a theme throughout the book of Moonshot Innovation as well, is how do we adapt our thinking, how do we adapt our behavior and provide the environment at which we can adapt to become more Moonshot Innovation led. So the next piece of Decoding AQ is a culmination of all the experience I've learned from writing this one, and each time we do something, we hope that we're going to do it better.
That's amazing. Well, I can't wait for the next one to be out as well. Ross, thank you so much for your time. It's been fantastic speaking with you about your book.
Thank you. You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.